Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? I'm glad to see you. Thank you very much, Baraka, for that wonderful introduction. Meeting Baraka is one of the extra benefits of this whole process. As she said, my name is Andy Horowitz, and I am, along with my colleague Risa Shoup, one of the co-organizers. Apart from CultureBot, I'm one of the co-organizers of the Brooklyn Commune Project, which is a grassroots initiative organized by CultureBot and the Invisible Dog Art Center to educate, activate, and unify performing artists of all disciplines to work together towards a more equitable, just, and sustainable arts ecology in America. And clap for that. It is an honor to have been invited here today and a great pleasure to share our project, our findings, and our vision with all of you. I want to take a minute and invite all of the other members of the Brooklyn Commune Coordinating Committee who were able to be here today to stand up and be recognized. Stand up, guys. Give them a round of applause. This has been a group effort, a collaborative process, transparent, open, participatory, and not everyone can be on stage today, but they, along with hundreds of other artists and administrators, have participated in person and online over the past 9 months to make this happen. A little background: in September 2011, I was working as the Director of Public Programs at the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council when Occupy Wall Street set up camp in Zuccotti Park, just a few blocks away from our office. When talking to artists, the conversation would inevitably turn to money, even more than usual. After a particularly frustrating exchange in the spring of 2012, I decided to organize a public panel discussion called At the Intersection: Art, Money, and Politics. The writer and artist Amy Whitaker moderated. Amy is an innovative thinker who has an MFA from the Slade School of Fine Art and an MBA from Yale University School of Management. So when she proposed, what if we considered economics as a collective creative design problem, a light bulb went off above my head. What if we did just that? What if we got artists together to tackle this creative design problem? Almost a year later, after numerous Facebook flame wars and a failed application to the MAP Fund, I'm not bitter. Risa and I and a few volunteers hosted the first public research session of the Brooklyn Commune Project at the Invisible Dog Art Center in Brooklyn, New York on March 24th, 2013. After a presentation by Randy Martin, the chair of the Art and Public Policy Department at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, and an interview with the artist Cynthia Hopkins about the harsh financial realities of even a successful artist, attendees were invited to participate in self-directed conversations using open space technology. At the conclusion of the session, breakout groups reported back to the larger group and identified the agenda for the rest of the project. Economics and finance, labor and value, foundations, funding and philanthropy, working outside the institution, cultural democracy and representation, and the aesthetics of performance. For the next 9 months, we worked our butts off to get a 360-degree view of the ecosystem and figured this out. We had 4 public research sessions, a weekend-long global convening at the end, just a bunch of special events, weekly meetings, independent research meetings, tons and tons of stuff. We were like Indiana Jones in Raiders of the Lost Performing Arts. Adventurous archaeologists and intrepid cultural anthropologists on a quest for the hidden secrets of a mythical civilization. Along the way, we uncovered a treasure trove of lost documents, publications, reports, and personal histories. But the watershed moment was when one of our core team, Nick Benassarath, give him a round of applause, not only discovered Boundel and Bowen's classic text from 1966, Performing Arts: The Economic Dilemma, but discovered that Boundel and Bowen had been his father's colleagues and thus procured the author's own copy for our use, the book itself being long out of print. So really important. We were astonished to discover that not only had the problem been identified almost 50 years ago, it had a name: Boundel's cost disease. And it is really, really simple. Trust me, none of us are economists either. Here goes. In a traditional market economy based on manufacturing, technological innovation leads to increased productivity. That decreases prices and raises wages. However, no amount of technological innovation can increase productivity in the performing arts. As Baumel and Bowen put it, human ingenuity has devised ways to reduce the labor necessary to produce an automobile, but no one has yet succeeded in decreasing the human labor expended at a live performance of a 45-minute Schubert quartet much below a total of 3 man-hours. The diagram there. So in 1908, you could build a Model T. It took 12 hours. Just in 1913, it took 2.5. It takes the same time to make a Schubert quartet. Now, as it did. Okay, the performing arts, like education and healthcare, ultimately require live human interaction, so they cost more than machines. Without increased efficiency and productivity, costs rise, and those increased costs can't be passed on to the consumer without driving ticket prices through the roof. So the performing arts requires subsidy through government funding and philanthropy. This funding is premised on the idea of the public good. Now, a public good is something that has public value but cannot pass the market test. The concept of public goods refers to things like clean air in Los Angeles, which almost no single individual could be convinced to pay for, but that everybody desires and from which everybody benefits. Even if the performing arts are fundamentally unsustainable in a pure market economy, they might still be deemed valuable to the general public. Now, a further complication, especially these days, is that in order to provide the performing arts as a public good for the public good, you need to agree that the performing arts are a public good, and you need to agree on who that public is. Now, it's too complex to go into for now. We do have a report online, and this one printed copy. But for now, I'm just going to rely on the words of America's founding fathers. In 1776, John Adams wrote, "There must be a positive passion for the public good, the public interest, and this public passion must be superior to all private passions." And George Washington wrote it around the same time, "The arts and sciences are essential to the prosperity of the state and to the ornament and happiness of human life." 190 years later, Baumel and Bowen wrote, "It is easy to visualize what might happen to the performing arts if their prime objective were profit maximization. One can envision the nation's performing arts reduced to a vestigial state, with a very small number of theaters and orchestras catering to an exclusive group of persons who can afford to pay the very high and ever-rising prices necessary to keep them going." And now, almost 50 years later, let's look at the numbers. Only 5% of all charitable giving in the United States goes to the arts. The $146 million budget of the NEA represents just 0.012%, about 1/100th of 1% of federal discretionary spending. In arts-friendly New York City, the budget of the DCA, Cultural Affairs, is only 0.25%. And 55% of foundation funding for the arts goes to the 2% of arts organizations with budgets exceeding $5 million. The effect of this is to allocate billions of dollars to serve a mostly wealthy, white, and shrinking audience. At the same time, non-white populations have grown in every region of the country since 2000. More than a third of the country is comprised of people of color, and in 4 states, white people are no longer the majority. And this is where it gets really interesting, because according to a 2001 study by the RAND Corporation, the number of individuals who dedicate themselves to art making without even expecting a living wage in return outnumbers those whose art practice generates their primary income by 20 or 30 to 1. And there is every reason to believe that proportion has increased greatly over the past decade. Technology has given rise to innumerable new methods, techniques, and materials for conveying emotional states and ideas. That's from the NEA. And these new forms of self-expression exist across multiple platforms and in multiple new contexts, fundamentally altering the sources and reach of creative expression. The truth is that creative output in America is at an all-time high. There are more self-identified artists than ever before. Technology has greatly expanded the possibilities of what art is and can be, and the already fuzzy line between artist and audience has nearly vanished to the point where it is safe to say that arts participation has not only increased, but is more diverse, creative, and imaginative than ever before. But the system operating system of the arts, if you will, is hopelessly inadequate and outdated. If you listen to their version of the story, you'd think the sky was falling. The truth is that throughout the country, a robust, diverse, and dynamic artistic culture is flourishing despite the lack of funding and infrastructure for today's artists and audiences. And where the system sees only crisis, we see almost infinite opportunities to create something new, exciting, different, and uniquely American in character. The first step in seeing this opportunity is seeing differently. And at this point, I'd like to invite my colleague, Lisa Shoup, to share some insights with me.
My name is Lisa Shoup, and I'm a co-organizer of the Brooklyn Commune Project, and I'm also the Associate Director of the Invisible Dog Art Center in Brooklyn, and a graduate fellow in the Program for Sustainability, Planning, and Design at the Pratt Institute, also in Brooklyn. For my days working with the arts organization Shashama, and later Brick Arts and Media, I have focused on providing artists with the physical and financial resources needed to create work, usually in the public sphere. So I think a lot about the relationship between artists, audiences, community, and development in every sense of those words. Because we live in New York City, which, despite what anybody says, is still part of the United States, our research has focused on the US and the American system. We are driven by democratic American values expressed through grassroots organizing, coupled with a desire for forward-thinking innovation. The first thing we'd like to invite you to see differently in the arts ecosystem itself, or rather, yes, because we've found that when you look at the system as a whole, the current boundaries drawn between artists, audiences, administrators, and institutions are false. In the 98% of arts institutions with budgets under $5 million, or no budgets at all, self-identified artists comprise a significant percentage of audiences and administrators. In fact, pretty much everyone involved in the performing arts is a practicing artist, an aspiring artist, or a former artist who has chosen a different career in order to make a decent living. Even those audiences and administrators who don't, or have never identified as artists, tend to share similar skills and concerns. So when we talk about community or community engagement, it helps to think about that. In the publication titled How Art Works, the NEA says that, quote, our capacity to innovate and to express ideas points to a core liberty within our society, freedom of expression. This freedom is facilitated by the arts. For example, the courage to express oneself and a tolerance of new ideas and vehicles for creative expression, end quote. So we talk about being arts presenters, but what we really are is community engagers. We are creating spaces for our communities to come together live and in person, even if only temporarily, to share transformative experiences that encourage individual creative expression and enhance our collective quality of life. Since self-identified artists who don't make a living from their work outnumber professional artists 30-1, the second thing we'd like to invite you to see differently is the definition of artist. You might well ask, if the performing arts are so economically challenging and most artists never make any money, why do people keep choosing to be artists? The answer is that artists receive something called psychic income. Don't worry, we're gonna get there. Psychic income is not a crazy thing. It is the pleasure and personal satisfaction you derive from your work. According to the NEA's 2012 publication, How Art Works, the human impulse to create and express is, quote, the primary motive that powers the system. The human impulse to create and express is so strong that people will withstand significant hardship to pursue it. Almost 50 years ago, Baumol and Bowen wrote, quote, as the general level of real income increases over time, people may well feel that they are better able to afford to pursue careers which offer relatively lower money incomes but larger psychic incomes. But, according to the Wall Street Journal, apart from brief lapses like in the late 1990s, wages have been falling for a generation. In fact, measuring on an inflation-adjusted basis, wages peaked in 1973, fully 40 years ago. So even as the number of self-identified artists has exploded, the choice to pursue a full-time career in the arts, to choose psychic income over financial income, has become elusive for all but the most fortunate. The reality is that the notion of the full-time artist who makes the entirety of their income from their art is mostly a myth. In case that's too abstract, let's look at the numbers. One of our core coordinating team members, Dorit Afghani, came up with an idea that became the 2013 Performing Arts Census. Using social media and in-person outreach, we gleaned the following from analyzing responses from the 526 artists and arts workers surveyed. 75% claimed to make between 0 and 10% of their income from their art practice. 50% of those polled spend at least $2,000 to $5,000 a year out of pocket on their art practice, and 81% of those polled spend $2,000 or more per year out of pocket. 20% is the amount of total income artists claim to receive from their art practice. 95% is the amount of total income artists hope to receive from their art practice in 5 years. It's funny, but it's also terrifying. 75,000 was the median annual income to be considered successful. $45,000 was the median annual income to be considered adequate for stability. To put that in perspective, for those of you who don't live here, according to a report by former New York City Council President Christine Quinn called The Middle Class Squeeze, middle class in New York City means a household income between $66,400 and $199,200. Lower middle class would be, don't worry, it gets worse. Lower middle class would be between $53,120 to $66,400. And low income in New York City would be anything below $53,120. Most artists in New York City saw $45,000 as adequate for stability and $75,000 as successful. You'd be hard-pressed to find any artist, even one who you think is successful, that makes $75,000 a year. Recent research indicates that not even so-called professional artists make a living solely from their artistic output, most usually earning at least part of their living through other jobs like teaching. In this light, the old distinctions between amateur and professional are almost meaningless, at least in terms of income. We conducted the Brooklyn Commune Project with no funding or administrative support. It took 3,156 individual human work hours and cost $131,000 to research and write our report and produce the affiliated events. Of that total, $114,950 was donated in kind and $8,400 was paid out of pocket. Self-identified artists, and remember, there are 30 amateur artists for every professional artist, and that there is little distinction between artists, audiences, administrators, and the 98% of arts institutions whose budgets are under $5 million almost always undervalue their work and underestimate what they need to get by. In plain language, not only do artists subsidize their own work, they subsidize one another's work. The current system depends on it. We self-subsidize our work because we believe it is valuable, because we believe in a culture of sharing and collaboration, and that the social good we create is important. Even as we devalue the labor we use to create it, even as funding meant to provide the arts for the public good, and we are part of that public, serves a mere 2% of the field. So even as funding trends come and go, innovation, sustainability, creative placemaking, the real question remains, how do we create a system that actually supports the 98% of the performing arts ecology that is living so precariously? How do we create a system that allocates resources strategically throughout the circulatory system, that nourishes the roots of the tree as well as the trunk, the branches, and the leaves? How can we imagine a world that operates differently from this one? And now I'm going to kick it back to Andy for the rest of our presentation.
I have 5 minutes, so I'm going to go really fast. I have 5 cards, a minute a card. Conventional wisdom holds that artists who struggle financially are failing to make their work efficiently or market it effectively, or it just isn't appealing to a broad enough audience. Conventional wisdom holds that all artists are bad with money, unprofessional and insufficiently entrepreneurial. Nothing could be further from the truth. Artists aren't bad with money, they just don't get paid well for their art. And nobody is more entrepreneurial than the artist who somehow manages to create and deliver a $50,000 show for $5,000 on time and ready to go with no administrative support while juggling 2 day jobs. Self-identified artists generally have wide-ranging skill sets and collaborative creative practices where they lead in one project, follow on the next. An individual artist may be a director or administrator on one project, a performer on another, a designer or a writer on yet another. Artists are incredibly entrepreneurial, resourceful, lean, agile, and resilient, frequently using the same creative skills in their art as their work. In fact, the corporate world is only now starting to learn how to work the way artists always have. Mark Tucker, the president of the National Center on Education and the Economy, says that the future of work belongs to those who are not only highly educated, but highly flexible, the most creative, the most innovative, the best communicators, the best at working in groups in which one was a leader at one moment and a follower at another. He's describing artists. Over the past 20 years in this country, we have moved from a manufacturing economy through the service economy into an experience economy, and are now moving into an ideas economy predicated on knowledge production and creativity. In this new economy, artists will be in demand not for the value they generate in terms of profits, but for the quality of their artistic research, their unexpected insights, and truly ingenious creative imaginations. As our society continues to become ubiquitously connected through technology, as our world becomes pervasively networked, digitally enhanced, and always on, moments of unmediated human interaction become increasingly scarce. Thus, the value of liveness, of direct human contact, increases. The very liveness that created an economic dilemma in a traditional manufacturing-based economy becomes a source of value, both in the ideas economy and the parallel but equally important human economy that is now emerging. An economy that is made and remade by people's actions as social beings. The performing arts are by definition social arts. They foster human interaction. They have the potential to educate, enlighten, and promote discourse. They occur in public space and can transform an audience of strangers into a community, however temporarily. Now, you may have heard the term social object. Social objects are objects around which social networks form. It can be a website, a painting, a building, a person, or a performance. Collaboratively creating social object is what performing artists do, and as demand increases for transformative, unmediated, live experiences, the need for specialists in the conceptualization, design, and implementation of those experiences will increase as well. In this context, we can imagine the performing arts existing at the intersection of creative expression, new economics, public life, and the social innovation design. All this can sound a little techno-futuristic, so I want to conclude by returning to the idea of ecology. We say arts ecosystem because, especially in the performing arts, it really is a complex, dynamic, and remarkably resilient system that is currently suffering from severe dysfunction. In his book, Future Perfect, Stephen Johnson writes, ecologists talk about the productivity of an ecosystem, which is a measure of how effectively the ecosystem converts the energy and nutrients coming into the system into biological growth. A productive ecosystem such as a rainforest sustains more life per unit of energy than an unproductive system such as a desert. A rainforest not only sustains more life, but it supports infinitely more biological diversity than a desert. Diversity, in all its forms, is the key to a healthy ecosystem. To echo Johnson from the same book, we are smarter as a society, more innovative, flexible in our thinking when diverse perspectives collaborate. To create a truly vital, dynamic, and resilient arts ecosystem, then we need to cultivate diversity, not only along the identity politics-based categories of race, gender, religion, or sexual orientation, but in terms of class, economics, aesthetics, intellect. We must collaborate to create an arts ecology that is as diverse as our country and actively supports a complex and interdependent system. The bad news is that the current system is broken and probably beyond our ability to repair, at least in the short term. The good that there is almost infinite opportunity to create something new. And to that end, we've included a list of specific recommendations in our report, which is available online at brooklyncommune.org. We hope you will read it and share it and join us in the process of imagining a world that operates differently than this one. It is up to you. The future is in this room. Let's make it shine.